Mobile Olympia Brass Band. Homegrown. Look at all these smiling faces. It's good to see you here. Thank you for coming. Thank you to Holly. Wonderful introduction. Thank you to Scotty and the museum for having me. Let's start with a show of hands. How many of you have been to a Mobile Mardi Gras parade or ball in the last year or two? I know you guys have. I may do a late night. I like having a band. How many of you have been to a New Orleans Mardi Gras parade in the last 3 to 5 years? That's more than I actually expected. I would say the random sample of Mobilians, you'd see even fewer hands than that. It's always been kind of surprising to me how few people in Mobile go to New Orleans Mardi Gras or know much about New Orleans Mardi Gras, but in a way it kind of makes sense. We're all busy with our own Mardi Gras right now. So, you know, why go 2.5 hours away for what you got right down the road? But what I'm here to talk about today is what may be some misconceptions, particularly about New Orleans Mardi Gras, and really just how similar the two are, believe it or not. And since this is the History Museum, I figured we'd start with a little history, just to set the stage. You all know about the Cowbellion Draken Society. I'm not going to go into the whole thing, but I will tell you on my website, themobilemass.com, I have posted in the history section what I consider to be the best version of how the Cowbellions came about, and by best I mean it rings the most true. There are a jillion versions of exactly how it started, but that's Michael Kraft. He is the, for lack of a better word, the patron saint of the Cowbellions. Not necessarily the guy who formed the group. There were guys who stepped up and did that more so than Kraft. Now, by the way, you notice in this photograph it looks like he's winking at you. He's been described many, many times as being one-eyed, having only one eye. Not true according to his sister. He had a lazy eye or a lazy eyelid. So it looked like he was winking at you all the time, basically. They started in 1835 as a formal organization. Now the Cowbellions became renowned across the Southeast. Everybody knew about the Cowbellions. In 1843, an organization called the Strikers was formed. The popular tale is, this organization was formed by young men in Mobile who couldn't gain acceptance into the Cowbellions. So they got tired of waiting around. They said, we can start our own organization. Let's start the Strikers. Then along came TDS in 1845. TDS you may have heard referred to as the Tea Drinkers Society. That was a kind of a tongue-in-cheek name that people in town gave them. The best I can tell is TDS never actually had a name. TDS was the name. And TDS may actually have stood for some Latin phrase that's been lost to time. There's not a whole lot of artifacts, is there, left from TDS. But you may recognize that fellow on the right, although he's out of costume. That's Joe Kane. Joe Kane was one of the founding members of TDS. He was 13 at the time. And I'm not even sure he was a tea drinker at 13. Now, one thing I want to point out, back up here, one thing I want to say about all three of these groups. These were New Year's Eve parading groups. That's when they did their thing. They paraded on New Year's Eve. They had their ball or banquet on New Year's Eve. People refer to them over and over again as carnival or even Mardi Gras mystic societies. To me, you may as well call them Easter mystic societies. They have as much to do with Mardi Gras as that. I mean, think about it. When you're celebrating New Year's Eve, the most you might be thinking about Mardi Gras is, well, Mardi Gras is coming up pretty soon. It is not a Mardi Gras celebration when you're doing New Year's Eve. These were New Year's Eve groups. Carnival season officially starts 12th night, January 6th, well after New Year's Eve. So to me, technically, to call these guys, these groups, carnival groups is a misnomer. However, these were the first mystic societies in the country, secret organizations formed for the purpose of having fun and throwing a party, throwing a parade. We've now come to think of mystic societies as a strictly Mardi Gras thing because there are no more New Year's Eve ones. So when Mobile is called the mother of mystics, it's because of these organizations. Now I want to move ahead a couple of years to three particular Mobilians who were members either of the Cowbellions or the Strikers or both. They didn't keep a lot of records. But Samuel Manning Todd and brothers Joseph and William Ellison left Mobile for New Orleans. They opened their own shops. One of them had a paint shop, I think. But they opened their own shops and whatnot in New Orleans. And obviously became friends with other merchants, that kind of thing. And what they quickly discovered, you see, Mardi Gras at that time, both in Mobile and New Orleans, was essentially private masked balls for very rich people. In New Orleans, there was the addition of what I refer to as kind of a devil's night. You remember we all heard about back in the day with Detroit and Devil's Night and all the trouble they had, and people would build bonfires in the middle of intersections. It was awful. Well, it's kind of like that in New Orleans around the time we're talking about when these guys moved there, that the folks would go out into the street masking and creating worse than mischief. Decent folks would stay indoors and lock their doors because there was some pretty bad stuff going on. And it got to the point where New Orleans newspapers were calling literally for a ban on Mardi Gras. So these three guys from Mobile and a few other guys who were one from Philadelphia, but they're all now New Orleans merchants, and they were talking about the problem with Mardi Gras and particularly the problem out in the street in Mardi Gras. Well, these guys said, well, you know what we did in Mobile? We would throw a parade. It wasn't on Mardi Gras, it was on New Year's Eve, but we would do a parade and people would mask and that kind of thing. And we had, really, and and they said, oh, well, you're talking about the Cowbellions. Yeah, we're talking about the Cowbellions. They were that famous. And so these guys decided to form a Cowbellion-esque society that would do their thing on Mardi Gras on Fat Tuesday. They came up with the Mystic Krewe of Comus in 1857. Mystic Krewe of Comus still exists. They don't parade anymore. But the Mystic Krewe of Comus was the first Fat Tuesday Mardi Gras mystic society, not only in New Orleans, but in the country. But it was formed by former Mobilians. And in fact, when Comus first paraded, they formed in 1857 and they paraded in February, I think it was February, I've got it on my cheat sheet somewhere, February 1857. February 24th, 1857. So they turned it around very quickly. And one of the things they did was, one or two of, I think it was the two Ellisons, went to Mobile from New Orleans to borrow floats from the Cowbellions, who had just done Paradise Lost in the streets of Mobile on New Year's Eve. So Comus did a Paradise Lost kind of thing. I think if you're in a Mardi Gras organization that rents floats from another organization, you understand how to manipulate your theme to fit the other guy's floats. So that's what they did. And in fact, the Comus parades became renowned internationally. But New Orleans was an internationally renowned city. Practically anything that happened there became international news. But to this day, you can see a plaque at Magazine and Julia Streets that marks where the first Comus parade started on February 24th, 1857. I say all this to just simply to simply be able to make this statement. Mobile and New Orleans Mardi Gras are cut from the same cloth. Remember that guy? He was in New Orleans some years later. He saw the Comus parade. Now, he'd already been doing TDS, and he was already familiar with the New Year's Eve thing. So he sees the Comus parade on Mardi Gras, and he says, we should do this on Mardi Gras in Mobile. And then along come the OOMs right behind him. And Mardi Gras in Mobile starts. I mean, this is the Hakuna Matata circle of life stuff, people. You know? I mean, my thing is, without Mobile, there would be no New Orleans Mardi Gras. Without New Orleans, there would be no Mobile Mardi Gras, in the modern sense. And frankly, there might not have been a New Orleans Mardi Gras left at all. I mean, Comus is widely credited in New Orleans with saving Mardi Gras in New Orleans. So let's talk about, let's move the clock up. Let's not talk so much about history now. Let's take a look at the two Mardi Gras as they exist today. Mobile has 35 parading organizations, and I'm talking about the city proper, you know, the downtown route. 35 separate parading organizations that put on parades for the last 18 days of the carnival season. Oh, I guess I should say, that was KOR. That, I think, was the MOTs. That was Mobile Mystics. By the way, most of these photos are mine. If they're not mine, I'll tell you. In New Orleans, they have 31 separate parading organizations that parade the uptown route, or some variation of the uptown route. 35 versus 31. They parade over the last 11 days of carnival. So we've actually got a longer parade period than they do. That's Endymion. Oops, shoot. There we go. That's Endymion up in the corner there. That's one of the super crews. This is Crew of Mid-City, bizarre organization. All of their floats are done in this foil paper. They're beautiful to see. You can't distinguish much in terms of, I mean, you see some flowers and that kind of thing, but it's all foil and it's very blinding if it's a sunny day. That at the bottom is the Crew of Rex. They parade on Fat Tuesday, and we'll talk in a second about a little more of Rex. In Mobile, we have fancy dress balls. And in fact, we have more fancy dress balls than we have parades, because there are more, virtually all of the parading organizations have balls, but there are a number of organizations that have balls and no parades. This is the MOTs from a couple of years back, and I stole this photo. This is the Crew of Hermes in New Orleans. New Orleans has a number of fancy dress balls. In fact, more balls than they have parades. Same situation. In fact, one of the biggest, the Rex Ball, is televised on public television in New Orleans, and they've been doing that for decades, I think. I mean, they've really been doing that a long time, and it's rather a notoriously boring ball. In Mobile, we have a king of carnival. We call him Felix 3. It's a different guy every year. He's got a queen, different queen every year. In New Orleans, they have a king named Rex. He's the king of Carnival. He is, the difference between the two, and you might notice right now an age difference. That's always the case. These days, Felix is a young man because of the way MCA does it. It's all about the debutantes and the young men who are the knights and that kind of thing. In New Orleans, Rex is an actual crew, just like the MOTs or something like that. And the king is selected from their membership, and it's usually somebody who's been in a long time. So it's always a much older person. But both of those reign over Carnival in pretty much the same way. In Mobile, we have a historically African-American parading group known as the Mobile Area Mardi Gras Association, or MAMGA. They just had their 75th anniversary last year. They hold a parade downtown. You've seen it, the Mammoth Parade. Everybody looks forward to it. In New Orleans, they have a historically African-American group known as Krewe of Zulu. Krewe of Zulu just had their 100th anniversary about 5 years ago. And there's a jillion things we could talk about Zulu. I mean, entire books have been written about Zulu. I will, mostly because I promised AL.com. This is a Zulu coconut. If you've never heard of a Zulu coconut, now you have, and you don't have to admit it in front of somebody from New Orleans because they will just wonder what rock you've been living under. Zulu coconut is the most desirable throw of New Orleans Mardi Gras. And there's a whole lot I could tell you about. They ran into insurance problems. You can imagine. Just broken windows alone. So now they don't throw them. They have to either hand them to you before they hit Lee Circle, there's no barricades. After Lee Circle, there's barricades. So once they hit the barricades, it becomes something of a different proposition. But if you look right here, lower left corner, see those nets? That's what people do. They come out to the barricades with these big long nets, and guys just drop them down into the nets. I have 8, and no, you can't have one. In Mobile, we've got some brass bands and school bands that we look forward to seeing every Mardi Gras season, including the fine gentleman to my right and a little band nobody's ever heard of called Excelsior. In New Orleans, you really can't swing a dead cat without hitting a brass band in New Orleans. They've got a jillion of them. This is the Storyville Stompers. But they're all over the place. So music, both places, very important part of Mardi Gras. We have a proud tradition of women's groups, women's parading groups. I see the polka dots leaning forward and pointing. Yes, that's a polka dot float from last year, right? I think it was last year. And that is the moms, Maids of Mirth. This tradition goes back to 1950, when both of these organizations first paraded. New Orleans has a proud tradition of female parading groups, started in 1941. This is one of the older ones on the left here. It's a Krewe of Iris. And on the right, one of the newer ladies' organizations called Muses. Very popular parade. I mean, they've only been around for 5-6 years, maybe a little longer, okay. But they've got, they come up at the top of everybody's list of, favorite parade. And in fact, tonight, a brand new ladies group in New Orleans is gonna parade the Krewe of Nix. In Mobile, we call them marshals. In New Orleans, they call them lieutenants or captains, depending on their actual rank. But these are maskers on horseback. In Mobile, we have this funny little group called the Comic Cowboys. They engage in satire and political humor and uh-oh. It's Mardi Gras, y'all. You don't know what's gonna happen. By the way, I wanted to mention, because I've heard this question before, Felix and Rex, the two kings, both started in 1872. We both kind of got the same idea at the same time. And both were started by businessmen. It was seen as a way of further promoting Mardi Gras by having a king over the whole thing, somebody that they could promote more or less. What were we talking? Oh, we were talking about Comic Cowboys. Satire, jokes, and you know, they say don't take it too seriously, right? New Orleans, they have a couple of different groups that engage in that kind of humor. This is Coup d'etat. Coup d'etat, one of the things I love about Coup d'etat is they don't have a king, they have a dictator. I just think that's hilarious. And he wears the Napoleon hat and walks around like that. And their symbol is a skull with a jester cap on. But they're hilarious. And everybody, just like Comic Cowboys, you know, we all want to know, oh, did you see the floats? Can I get pictures of the floats? What were the jokes? Everybody wants to know what they said. Same thing with Coup d'etat. Everybody wants to know what the jokes are. Muses, for example, they tend to be humorous too, but they don't indulge in that level of spearing people that Coup d'etat can. In Mobile, or outside of Mobile, I should say, we have a number of suburban parades. And Eastern Shore, for example, mostly has been growing in recent years. But the influence of Mobile's Mardi Gras goes further and further out. There's a parade in Bay Minette, there's a parade in Foley. There are two parades in Dauphin Island. Maybe you've seen them. Some of these are very, very community oriented and very, very community sized. Some of the Eastern Shore parades are rivaling downtown Mobile in size, however. In the New Orleans area, there are parades in Slidell, Metairie, and other locations around New Orleans. This is a crew of Dionysus. I stole this picture. This is a crew of Dionysus in Slidell. But again, just like Mobile, they have these community-oriented, because it's important to folks in the outlying areas to be able to have their own piece of Mardi Gras. In Mobile, we're very fond, and I heard it in this room at least once today already. We're very fond of saying that our Mardi Gras is family friendly. It's for kids, it's family friendly. Our inference being that other Mardi Gras not so much. New Orleanians would take offense hearing that right to their face. their Mardi Gras can be pretty family friendly as well. The trick is, here's the thing. We, just like people in Iowa, all we've really heard about New Orleans Mardi Gras is Bourbon Street. Bourbon Street, Bourbon Street. That's not New Orleans Mardi Gras. People in New Orleans will tell you that's not New Orleans Mardi Gras. That's a bunch of bars and a big scene that, you don't want any part of. The parades are actually outside of the French Quarter. They kicked them out of the French Quarter when the floats got too darn big for the streets in the French Quarter. I think, if I remember right, it was actually the development, it was Bacchus who ruined it for everybody. Bacchus started putting out these big floats and they said, forget it, we're just not going to be able to get these things down here. They were tearing up some balconies and stuff as they were going by. So now they have this uptown route, and the closest they get to the French Quarter is Canal Street. And between you, me, and the lamppost, I will not go to Canal Street for a parade again. I tried it once, not again. But the uptown route goes deep into New Orleans neighborhoods. They go out there and carve out little pieces of territory. They bring out blankets. They bring out coolers. They bring out grills. They bring their kids. They play football. Is this starting to sound familiar? So the next time you say that Mobile has a family-friendly Mardi Gras, maybe you might say ours is family-friendly too. Now, I want to show you a couple of pictures here. Believe it or not, that's Mobile, that's New Orleans. I thought these just kind of pointed up some real similarities. That's Conde Cavaliers on the left and the crew of Orpheus, which was started by Harry Connick Jr. A few years back. That's one of their permanent floats is called Smoky Mary. By the way, I have an Orpheus doubloon. You know what a doubloon is, right? Aluminum coin that is thrown at Mardi Gras. There's an Orpheus doubloon. I'll let that hit you in the head. Those came out in 2009. I think it was the only year they did it, because I think they did hit a few people in the head. Look at that. On the left, that's the Bacca Gator. That's one of Bacchus's permanent floats. On the right, we have a float the Mobile Mystics had a couple years back. Order of Butterfly Maidens in Mobile. And this is, yeah, it's one of my pictures, it's not so great. But you can see the butterflies. That was also Muses, the crew of Muses. I swear sometimes I really have to look at them to remember which one's Mobile and which one's New Orleans. This is a float from the Pharaohs in Mobile. This is a float from, it's not daytime, so it's not Toth. To tell you the truth, I forget which group in New Orleans. It may, yeah, I forget. Hermes, it was Hermes. Look at that. I'll tell you, who wants to tell me which one, if you don't already know for sure, but who wants to take a guess at which one is the Mobile one? Left. That is left. That was a float from the Infant Mystics last year. Wasn't that last year's parade? And on the right is a Rex float. Rex parades in the daytime. Beautiful floats. They're very small, and they're still on old wagons. You can see the wagon wheels underneath. This one will kill you. I mean, you've got to see the familiar landmark right there to know which one is which. This was an MOT. This was a Mystics of Time parade. This is Proteus. Now I'm going to blow your mind. Both floats were built by the same company. Royal Artists out of New Orleans. A lot more similar than you think. Now there are some differences. We have Jocane Day. Have you ever tried to explain the Widows to somebody from out of town? So the man had a lot of wives? No, he only. So why are there, well, But you know, you got to get some of these. If you don't get them from the widows, it doesn't count. But you got to get some of these. This to me is this is our Zulu coconut, I think. Black rose from the widows. You probably recognize that. I mean, it wouldn't be Mardi Gras without that dragon coming at you and scaring the heck out of kids with the smoke and the fire and all that stuff. I apologize to those of you who have eaten lunch recently. But that is a cow bladder being inflated by the Knights of Revelry. And there's a bunch of them dried and painted. Why on earth do they use cow bladders? It's tradition. It's just tradition. I mean, back in the day, when there weren't balloons, and these guys are that old, this was what they came up with. This is the order of myths. This is the enduring image of Mobile Mardi Gras. This is a portal, if you will, back almost 150 years. Folly, chasing death around the broken column of life, and still smacking him, not with cow bladders, pig bladders. Don't ever make that mistake when you're talking to one of those guys. Cow bladders, K-O-R, pig bladders, O-O-M. Now I want to show you something here. This is out of New Orleans. New Orleans parades, they have, not every parade, but some of the parades, they have a lot of flambeaux. You've probably heard of flambeaux. You probably haven't seen a lot of flambeaux. The interesting thing about flambeaux, and this is I know you can't read this, but take my word for it. This is from a museum in New Orleans. And this sign gives Mobile credit. For bringing flambeaux to New Orleans. Because the whole problem was, think about it, not a whole lot of street lighting, there's no electrical lights, but they want to parade at night. Well, how do you do that? Flambeaux were essentially torches, and they put metal shields on one side so that the glare of the fire is not in your eyes. See, they're holding the shield between you and the float, and it's reflecting up on the float. So this was the solution. This is how you could see this float that they worked so hard on in the middle of the night on a street that has, tiny little gas lights that don't do much. Let's take a look at that OOM picture again. That's what's left of Mobile flambeaux. We essentially abandoned them because they're dangerous. These floats are made out of paper and cloth and whatnot. These things are dangerous. But they do still carry these as, again, a nod to tradition and something that we originated. I want to talk for 1 second. New Orleans, as we all know, is a little bit different. It is the cultural Galapagos of the United States. Things evolve differently there. Jazz funerals, beignets, or the cute little way they mispronounce things like Burgundy and Calliope. They just do things differently. This is a Mardi Gras Indian, if you've never seen a Mardi Gras Indian before. And there's a bunch of them. And again, entire books have been written about Mardi Gras Indians. If you're interested, go get you one. I'm not going to take that much time. But the thing about Mardi Gras, one of the things about Mardi Gras Indians, besides their fabulous suits, and that's what they call it. It's not a costume, it's not a uniform, it's a suit. And they have a new suit every year, and it's handmade. The idea is to be prettier than the other guy. My chief is prettier than your chief. Your chief should bow down. No, I won't bow down. That's how it goes. These guys have their own language. And honestly, you can't even find translations for some of the things that they say. Tue Pakaway. I'm not even sure they know what Tue Pakaway really means. Giacomo Finane. Probably heard that one. Made Tudi Fayo. African, it almost sounds African, doesn't it? But the Mardi Gras Indians were born out of the very centers of the African American communities, and it's a long and proud tradition. But one thing that they truly give, and they still do this, and on Mardi Gras Day, you can go away from the parade route and see these guys doing their thing. It's fabulous. But one of the things they gave to all of us at Mardi Gras is their music. There are a number of songs, if you start listening to them, Iko Iko. You guys want to do a little Iko Iko again? Yeah. Crank her up. I caught him by surprise. 1, 2, 3. Maybe not. There you go. So I bet a lot of you recognize this. The funny thing is, when I was in college, my friend who was a huge Deadhead, and the Grateful Dead do Iko Iko, or they did Iko Iko at all their shows, and he told me, nobody knows what it really means. Yeah, well, if you're plugged into the Mardi Gras Indians, you know exactly what it means. The words to Iko Iko are all about the Mardi Gras Indians. Songs like Indian Red, Hey Paki Way, Big Chief, all these come right out of the Mardi Gras Indian culture. Did anybody watch Treme, the TV show Treme on HBO? A lot about the Mardi Gras Indians in that. If you want to go back and watch some Treme, it's really interesting stuff. But there's no denying the musical heritage of New Orleans is huge, from jazz to zydeco to bounce. And a lot of, the vast majority of our Mardi Gras songs actually come out of New Orleans, particularly since there was such an active recording industry there in the 1950s, 1960s when a lot of those songs came out. Something else they do in New Orleans that we don't do so much is they costume. I mean, brother, they costume. I mean, they talk about their costume for 6 months. What are you gonna be for Mardi Gras? My wife took a lot of these, by the way. Nancy, say hi. She took a lot of these costume pictures. But these things are, it's amazing. Particularly if you go into the French Quarter, later on Mardi Gras Day when the parades are over, you see a lot of these folks walking around. I mean, what can I tell you? Sometimes scary. You know, and in Mobile, we'll put on a silly hat. We'll dress up a little bit. Not bad. Not bad at all. Who the heck is that guy? I'm sure you've been stuck to him next to him on the parade route before. And I love this guy. We found him just the other day on Government Street. Also, one other thing I want to mention about New Orleans that they do that we don't do as much, although we kind of do. They have these little neighborhood parades. Our neighborhood parades tend to be kids' parades. We have a lot of those, and some of them are adorable. If you've never been to a kids' parade, I highly suggest it. Mobile Mask has a list of almost all the kids' parades. I'm always finding out about new ones. But up here in the upper left, this is a fairly recent group. It's called Teat Rex, Small Rex. And that's a float. Everything is small. Their theme is always about something small. You know, it's the little things that matter, it's things like that. And their throws, they hand them to you like this. And they have a ball and everything. But it's hilarious. It's a great idea. You know, if you don't have the money for floats, make them little ones. And this is the crew of Red Beans and Rice. It's a walking group, and they make outfits out of Red beans and rice. You gotta hope for no rain. But you know, in the end, we both pretty much have the same mess to clean up. People ask me all the time, who's first? Who's first? Like I told you at the beginning, it's cyclical. To me, it's really not that important. To me, it's almost a little bit like Christmas, in that you remember that first time you spent Christmas with a family that wasn't your own family, whether it was your fiance or whatever, and suddenly they were doing Christmas completely different than you were used to doing. Wait, we don't have turkey on Christmas Day. Wait, we don't open presents on Christmas Eve. That's crazy. But it's still Christmas. It's just a little different. And that's how I think about it. It's a little different. One's not better than the other. One's not different than the other. And who the heck cares what came first? Happy Mardi Gras. Time for questions? A couple of questions.
History of the moon pie and Mardi Gras.
Well, the popular story is that, and I have to couch a lot of these things in the popular story or the legend, because you know written history is a little tough to come by. But the popular story is that Cracker Jacks were banned as throws because they came in boxes, pointy boxes, and hit people in the eyes. And so I'm trying to remember which crew has last claimed to be the first one to throw the moon pie. Was it MOTs? I'm not so sure about that, but anyway. One of them got the brilliant idea to throw moon pies. They're nice and soft and they're tasty and whatnot. But if you've ever seen anybody throw a giant box of moon pies off of a float, they can hurt just as much as Cracker Jacks. And now Cracker Jacks come in little bags. And so we get Cracker Jacks and ramen noodles and stuff like that. Is that the history you were talking about? I mean, the moon pie itself has a much older storied history. Yes, sir.
Yes, I'm from Madison, Alabama. It's right outside of Huntsville. What did you share with those guys as they're going to do their first Mardi Gras parade Saturday night in Huntsville?
That's Huntsville is doing their first ever, as far as anybody can tell, Mardi Gras parade. They're actually doing it as a fundraiser for it's kind of a homegrown Ronald McDonald House. It's for people who come in to stay at the hospital and so they have a place to stay. But the woman I talked to this is her idea and she set it up, she's never been to Mardi Gras. Anywhere. She just thought it sounded like a good idea. But she has people on her committee that know something about Mardi Gras. But she was, there was no real single advice I gave her. She had a lot of questions about how exactly is it structured here. You know, I told her there was, you know, the core of it is not what she's doing it, but I said, you know what, it can grow up in a lot of different ways. And I'll tell you what, it's going to be a dinky parade by our standards. But you know what, they all start as dinky parades. It's going to be interesting to see what grows out of it. It'd be interesting to see if we have a sister city that really does carry on some Mardi Gras. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Is it true that the Mardi Gras flags and decorations are the color of the Russian royal family and represent nostalgia for the fall of Romanos?
I have read a book, a recent book, that says no. You're talking about the New Orleans Mardi Gras colors are purple, green, and gold. By the way, I consider myself bi-carnival. I can have fun in both places. But these are the New Orleans Mardi Gras colors, and they come directly from Rex. These are the official colors of the crew of Rex. What I've most recently read is that it had nothing to do with the Russian, I forget what he was, prince or something. It wasn't the top guy. It was not the top guy. It was like, I'm sorry?
Grand Duke Alexis.
Him, Grand Duke Alexis. He was coming to town and it was a big deal, and apparently they hurried along the formation of Rex to make sure that Rex was parading while he was in town and whatnot. But the whole idea that these were the house, the colors of his house have, as far as I can tell, been poo-pooed. By the way, since you bring up colors, you know, the official Mardi Gras colors for Mobile are just purple and gold. But we've all bought into the purple, green, and gold so much. I don't give anybody a hard time about adding green. Yes, ma'am, way back there.
This is more of a question for the room. One of the masters, when they came through, they accidentally threw the key to their room at the Civic Center.
Are you sure that wasn't on purpose? Are you sure that wasn't on purpose? Those guys, I'm telling you. Yes, sir.
To this day in Louisiana, there are dozens of Mardi Gras events in rural areas.
Yes.
Was that ever so in South Alabama?
Not that I've ever heard about, but there is, yes, what's referred to as basically Cajun Mardi Gras. And they have some really weird ways of having fun out there. They get on horseback and they chase chickens and I'm not playing. That's what they do. But they make a lot of great music in the process, and they eat like kings. But no, I'm really not, I have not run across anything of a country Mardi Gras in South Alabama or even Mississippi.
Steve, in lieu of any other questions, let's say we'll be available to talk afterwards, and let's thank Dory McIntosh and the band for coming.
Mobile Olympia Brass Band, thank y'all so much.